And welcome to another week of Roll of 24 for 13 through 19 July 2026. And here is my theatrical roll of 24. And for again this week, very eclectic. I had a fun time going out to various different locations. But before I start, I just wanted to mention the photograph behind me. This is provided, well, I did not provide it. I purchased a $100 print from Mr. Jared Poland of FronoKnows.com in his special project of charitable donations or contributions to a person named George that lives over in Africa. And so I did ask permission, and they got granted to use this elephant tusk as a backdrop for this week's presentation within Roll of 24. And once again, I had an exciting week going out and capturing a variety of different things. My purposeful picture this week is actually distortion. I really wanted to see, and we'll show how I set up the camera in the background. And Charlie and I went out for a walk, and I used a 10mm on this outhouse that I found at the west end of my subdivision where somebody's doing some construction. Another neighbor still has some Esperanza flowers still out there braving the Texas heat of 100-degree days. I also have an update on the pecan tree in my front yard and how it's grown over the last several months. And I took a picture of a chair. Doesn't sound very exciting, but there's a story behind why I took the picture of a chair. Charlie and I went out during the week, and I captured a new dog. Dog's name is Butters. Very friendly dog, so it'll be interesting to show Butters off in the presentation. And the last image I took was out, actually, I was trying to capture a bird that was in my grapes out front, and while waiting for the bird to return, Lovely Bride has this little Halloween fall character sitting out there. There used to be two, and now there's one because one of them got hit with a weed whacker. On with our presentation. So here in image 1A is the behind-the-scenes setup for my attempt at distortion. And what's important is to pay attention to the first row on the left of red bricks and the next row of yellow in the center, and because that's going to play a vital part when you see the images of what I was able to capture. I started off with electronic first curtain, but that scared the birds away, so I ended up going over to fully electronic and set everything up and set it on an interval timer of every 10 seconds. So for 3 hours, I captured or did not capture anything in the scene. And so here is photograph 1B, which was my very first successful capture using the distortion. I started off at 8:33. This is at 9:07. So while I had captured a few other creatures, none of them were close enough to the screen to be really considered distorted. And as I mentioned in the prior video or photograph, the center, the red bricks on the left and the yellow centers in the right. And you can see in this image the squirrel is on the far right hand side, and so not very well distorted at 10mm, but it was a first attempt, so it's interesting. So here is image number 2. I think this was my most successful attempt at distortion, and once again we have the red brick right in front of us and the squirrel is on the yellow brick. And so they were the closest, or almost the closest, to the lens. And we can now see it's almost 9:30. So the camera's been set up for almost an hour, taking an image every 10 or 15 seconds using an interval timer. And so all the settings are, well, not all the settings, because the iOS is set to auto. So as the clouds rolled in, the sun came through, the ISO was fluctuating, but everything else was at 1/800 and f9. And this bird here, I'm not sure what type it is. I'm not sure if it's a brown grackle or what it is, But as you can see, it's in front of the yellow center and right there on the reds, right there in the shrubbery, right below the camera. This bird was the only capture where somebody was right in front of the camera. And what's great is it's actually looking up and, hey, you taking a picture of me? Hey, where are you at? There's nothing here but this big black box. So I thought this was pretty successful. Once again, it took about 3 hours, 4 hours, about 600 images just to capture these 4 images or 3 images that I thought were a pretty good representation of distortion with the 10mm lens. So it had actually started raining. You can see down below Charlie, the deck is kind of wet, and so went out and picked up the camera and started wiping it off, and Charlie was up on the upper part of the deck. I'm standing down on the dark brown deck, and Charlie's giving me these puppy dog eyes and like, what are we doing out here in the rain? I thought we were done playing in the rain. So anyways, his nose is literally at the bottom flange of the 10mm, and I did realize that the camera was turned on, so I just held down the button. I didn't hold down the autofocus or anything, but this is the image that came out. I just thought his puppy dog eyes just mesmerized as he looks up at me. So in this image here, this is the crepe myrtle that I have, one of them, growing around my whole fence, my back property. And because of all the rain we'd had the last 3-4 days and then this current rain, all the branches are really bending over. And so I just finished taking that picture of Charlie and his snout, and I looked up and I literally walked right face first into this flower, backed up, and I was like, you know what, let's see if I can capture this. The sun had just come out, so that was pretty good. 1/250 f4 because it was just right in front of me, and that's all I wanted in focus was just the flower petals and stuff. So I thought it turned out pretty cool. So on my phone, I have this, I don't want to call it stargazing, but it's called Skywalk. And every night near 7 o'clock, they always send me out a little alert and notification of what's going on in the night sky. And they were talking about the conjunction of Venus and the moon. And you can see here that Venus is up there at the 12 o'clock position. And the, I don't know what, eighth of a moon? Not sure what the actual measurement was. But I just thought it was really interesting, and I use the R6 Mark II nighttime photography, lower megapixels, and so the moon was moving just in a position over my fireplace exit part, and I just thought that was just really interesting. And so the first one was where the moon was right above the exit. This one, I'm still taking series. I've set up the camera to take 7 auto exposures because I just really wasn't sure, how much time, all the different variables that go into nighttime photography. And so you can see a little bit of a stretching of the moon here because of the time involved within this. But I just loved how it went. So this was 0.8 seconds of an image. So of course we got a little movement in the moon, but not so much that it made it blurry, and I was able to capture a few more stars in this image with the longer exposure. So after this image is going to be the image of the blue chair, and here's the story behind the blue chair of the image that's going to come up, is that the wife and I, lovely bride, were up in Canada 2 years ago, and 2024, and we were walking around, and I have a hard time saying these Adirondack chairs. And so these were setting up. We didn't sit down in them because it was cold. It was maybe 35, and we're used to 70. But these chairs were sitting out there, and not only did I take some pictures with the R6 Mark II, took some with the cell phone. Lovely bride pulled out her cell phone. I was like, why are we taking pictures of chairs? Just a beautiful scene. And so during this week, I'm sitting in the office, and I'm getting some stuff set up, and I looked out the door and scooted over, and I was like, you know what? There's a chair. I've got a picture of chairs. And so what's interesting is I think I used too big of an aperture because the front part of the chair is kind of blurry, and it looks like my focal point was actually on the bench that was behind there. So something that's just right out the front door from where I sit in my office. It seems like an easy and simple picture. You can capture it, but in hindsight, during post-processing and everything else, I got the focal point wrong, so something to practice. So I have two neighbors throughout my whole subdivision that still have some flowers growing in their yard and were accessible. I don't know if it's because their house is situated between a water runoff that takes the water out of our subdivision out into an open field, but both of them had some flowers that were very pretty, and I just love this wildflower right here. I did have the 10 to 20. I was playing around with the 10 to 20. I just wanted to see. I hadn't used it in a couple days, so I wanted to get out there and practice with it, and just loved how I was able to capture this without a macro lens. I thought it turned out nice. So here is another plant in the other neighbor on the right, and they're orange espinanzas. And the owner actually came out and was wondering what I was doing, because I had Charlie with me too. He was being very well behaved. And I explained, hey, there's only a few flowers left, and I wanted to come out and photograph them. And so he stood out there and watched me take pictures of these. And I asked him what type they were. He said some type of firecracker, something or other. And of course, I used my iPhone, took a picture, looked it up, and it says, well, they're orange espinazas. You can't trust Google and their answers. So what he knows them as and what my phone identified them as doesn't really matter. They're very vibrant orange colors. So now I'm back to the neighbor on the left-hand side of this water runoff area, and I'd actually walked up this thing probably about 20 feet, and because his house is maybe 5 feet from the water runoff, or at least this flower bed that they've added in the front. So I was able to just lean over. I did put 1 foot in his yard, but he was out of town. But once again, the neighbor's over there eyeballing me to see what it was I was doing. So I didn't want to just climb up into the person's yard. But I thought this was a very pretty yellow flower, yellow bells that were still growing. And once again, it's been 100 degrees for the last couple days. So they are doing very good in the high heat, high humidity of Texas. So after about 35, 40 minutes of hanging around taking pictures of the orange and yellow flowers, that neighbor was still out there. I just don't know how professionals in sports and like golf or bowling deal with people just staring. I mean, the guy was just eyeballing me the whole time, watching me move left and right, watching Charlie, who was just laying down in the shade, not doing anything. So anyways, I finally got up, and Charlie and I started moseying down the road. I just wanted to see what else was out there. And I found this fire hydrant that I thought, with the blue backdrop and the sun over on the left-hand side setting in the west, I just like the shadows and everything. And once again, I'm still using the 10 to 20, so I'm still playing with some distortion here. And so this is 12A, and the reason why it's A and B you'll see here shortly. But we were coming, as you can see, the sun is behind me setting to the west. And Charlie was moseying around underneath this tree where in the next image in 12B, you're going to see I used previously for what's called a frame within a frame. And Charlie gave me a glance back. Well, of course, I had to call his name. I just really loved how he was mostly in the shade and the shadows being projected over onto the fence. I did have to darken up the road on the right-hand side within Lightroom because it was just way too overblown. Well, almost overblown. So I darkened that up to get this image. And so that's why these trees may or may not look familiar. I've used this image before of Lovely Bride. I'd gone out, and that week I challenged myself to do what's called a frame within a frame. And we had seen these crepe myrtles earlier in the day, and so we came out when the sun was setting. You can see how bright it is in the background. But I was just practicing with capturing a frame and within a frame. And so the prior image over there for 12A was Charlie, once again being framed within a frame. And so I included this prior picture with Lovely Bride, and I had turned it into a black and white. So one spot can be used multiple times throughout the year. And so another 3 or 4 blocks down the road, it was still pretty warm and getting hotter, and the day was still progressing on. But I came down to the corner and I was getting ready to make a right turn, but I saw this over to the left. As you can see, it's 5:45. And this is a outhouse porta potty over in this construction zone. They had just recently poured this parking lot. And so I was like, you know what? I don't know if I've ever taken a picture of a porta potty. It's not something people would think and consider taking. Once again, this was greatly exaggerated in camera. I had to do some straightening inside a Lightroom because, once again, I'm using a 10 millimeter, creating great distortion. So after taking a picture of the porta potty, I was like, you know what? I don't want to go back that way. Let's cut behind this building and go out to this other little strip mall across a field so Charlie could maybe take care of business before we got home. And as we came out of the field that's over to the left out of image, is the sun still nicely projecting a good sunbeams and shadows. And I saw this trash dumpster inside of its little corral. And this is at 18 millimeters, backed up, moved forward, backed up, moved forward. Really tried to get most of this composed in frame instead of having to crop later in Photoshop. I did use the 9:16 aspect ratios, but everything else is pretty from straight camera. So this is not from earlier, but it's the same location that I was at earlier, shooting the orange Esperanzas and the yellow bells. Once again, that guy was out there staring at me, eyeballing me for the 45 minutes I was there. And it was just really bright. I was having to use 1/4000, 1/8000. And so now it's 7:30 in the evening. The sun's lower in the western horizon. And I went out and got Charlie. And I knew exactly what I wanted to capture. I wanted to capture these ferns, and I wanted to revisit the orange flowers, Esperanzas, which are going to show up next. So this one is at 1/50 of a second at f8. And then this one right here, reposition the camera. The sun is still bright, but I was using different apertures and speed to get a different effect on these different ferns. I thought they were just really interesting. They're only about 12 inches tall, but using the 10 millimeter and being just right up into them, I just loved how the ultra wide angle was able to capture the scenes and the colors and the foreground, the bark. It's really little bark. It's only about 2 inches, but when you look through the image here in the foreground, it looks like the bark is really large when in fact it's not. I just loved how this image turned out. And so after capturing those ferns, and once again, this neighbor guy did not come out of his house, even though his two dogs were in the front window barking at Charlie. Charlie was not barking back. He ignored him, was just sitting down in the shade. So I had a little bit more time and focus. There were no clouds in the eastern horizon, so it's just all washed out. But that wasn't the focus of my attempt here to photograph these Esperanzas, because I'm still trying to figure out and play with the 10 millimeter for objects up close. And you can see the elongation and the distortion on the right and left, though the center flower really didn't have that much distortion. It's got some, but I just love the coloring of these flowers so late in the year in Texas. So this is Charlie over at the front gate of the dog park. This is a new dog. His name is Lucky. And while it was still on the leash, they were barking. But once they took him off the leash, the dogs played very well together. And this is Barry, Berry, not B-A. And I don't remember what kind of fluffy dog this is, but this was one of three dogs that Charlie met this day that we've never met before. And very friendly little dog. Well, not little. He probably weighs about 40 pounds, 30 pounds. But came over, as most of them do, because I carry a snack bag on my hip. And, of course, they'd all been gone. But just talk about fluff. You're pushing down. It's like, I know its head is in here somewhere. Never did see the eyes, but just very interesting, the tongue design of pointed. So after I captured these friends and talked to the owner, and this is Commander. And so I'm wondering to myself, maybe I should Google, how many German Shepherds have the name of Commander? Very fitting, though. Very pretty German Shepherd. played keep away with the ball. Charlie's not really interested in balls except for when other dogs have them. Their owner would get the ball, throw it. Charlie would follow after the dog. The dog would pick up the ball, and then Charlie would look over and like, oh, that's what you're after. Nah, I'm not into it. But Commander and Barry, they had a great time playing with Charlie. And we have one more dog here to introduce after this video. And I'll be honest, one of the reasons why I go out there and lay down on the ground, looks like I'm sitting up here, but training and trying to capture dogs in videos with an extended lens on is a challenge, but it gets me ready for when I want to go out birding and try and catch birds in flight. So it is difficult, but it is well rewarding. And I don't want to be biased or anything, but this is Butters. This is the first time we've ever met Butters. A very pretty Irish setter, very friendly. I think he's 9 or 10 months old, so near the same age as Charlie. And I believe Commander was like a year and something. So it's amazing how people always give their months and years of their dogs, just like they do with babies. Oh, he's 23 months old, going on 24 next month. Yeah, duh. Anyways, so this was Butters, and he did very good in that he had a great time with Charlie, Commander, Barry, and a few other dogs. Oh, that dog Lucky. And then near the end, when he was getting all panty with his tongue hanging out, he was very cooperative and sitting around and posing for me. Here he is walking back, and he was probably all of 3 feet away and trying to zoom in, zoom out the lens. You're like, what's going on here? So I just took the pictures that I had. The eyes are not as sharp as one would expect, but when the dog is moving and you are laying down and you can't get the focus knob spun back fast enough, you can see I'm at 1600 and at 500 millimeters, but Butters is all maybe 4 or 5 feet away from me, so very funny. So what does a normal person do when they go order food for takeout? Well, I don't know if I'm not ordinary or not, but I went inside this Mexican restaurant, ordered up my food. They told me it'd take 8 to 12 minutes. I'm like, that's plenty of time. Went back out. I had the macro lens set up already on the camera, and along the back property line where this restaurant was at were these bushes and trees. And I was looking for some bugs, didn't find any, but I did find this interesting growth or whatever this is. I don't know if it's a seed pod or what, but it looks like kind of like a monster or something to me. It was the only thing that I found that was interesting, but so I captured it. Looks very cool. So as I stated in the introduction, I was sitting out in the front chairs going into the entrance on my patio to the front door, and you're going to see here in a couple images, but I was waiting for this bird to come back. Previously, Charlie and I had been sitting out front, and the bird was swooping down underneath the grapes and doing something inside. So I put Charlie into the back and brought out the 200 to 800 or 100 to 500, and I'm just sitting there and just minding my own business, waiting for the bird to come back. It had come in and out, and I was unsuccessful. And the wife and I had been in the swimming pool all summer, and like, where are the wasps coming from? Not even knowing that these wasps are right here 8 feet outside my front door, and I didn't even recognize them until I came out here to take pictures of the birds. And so here is an individual frame that I processed inside of Lightroom, trying to take a video with a long lens, and the subject is 4 feet away from you, super small. Let's just say I struggled some. But here is the image that I captured. It's just sitting there. I did not destroy the wasp nest after this. It's still out there in the front yard. It's pretty cool over there at the 4 o'clock position. You can actually see one coming out of its, whatever those things, honeycombs. So it's an active wasp nest out front. They don't bother us, and so I've left them alone and let nature do its thing. So, as you just heard, it's just ambient noise outside the front yard. I didn't have any type of special high-sensitive microphones to put right next to there so you could hear their wings and stuff, but just fascinating. And here is the capture of the one bird that I'd been watching earlier fly in and underneath my grape plants out front. And I spent 2.5 hours out there. It's now 3 o'clock. And so I captured this, and I was still out there for another 45 minutes hoping it would come back. It only came underneath one time, but because of the lens I was using, its distance from me to it, the shadows, by the time I got locked in, it was too late. 1/800, ISO 6400, f7.1. This is at 500 millimeters, and I was all of 8 feet away from where this bird sat. And so I just thought it was a really nice capture, but it was the only one I did capture. And once again, right after I captured that image of the bird and it flew away, just like last week with the pipes coming out of my garage wall from my hot water tank, you're just sitting there and you're waiting and you're waiting. And it's like, yeah, what else is there to photograph? And earlier, when I'd brought Charlie from the backyard to the front yard, for some reason, he wanted to grab his little squeaky ball. And so when we went back to the backyard, he forgot to pick his little squeaky ball up. And so it was just sitting out there in the grass, and I just loved how the shade from the tree, but you can see further out the brightness of the grass from the setting sun. And this is frame 24 for this week's roll of 24, even though I do have a update bonus picture next. This is one of the remaining 2 fall characters that my wife has had sitting out there all year from last fall. There was another one on the right-hand side, but I wasn't paying attention earlier during the summer, and coming around the corner with a weed whacker in hand, and the next thing I know, I had just weed whacked off the nose and eyes of the other doll that was sitting there on the right-hand side, and so I disposed of it. It took Lovely Bride about 2 weeks to realize, hey, where's my other doll at? And so I had to confess. And so I call this an update. This is from my pecan tree in the front yard. And as you can see, the nuts are growing quite large. I've got one branch that's now bent over the sidewalk. I had to prune off a couple of them, but they are just huge and full of pecans. But earlier in the year, this was the image of those, well, I don't think they want to say the same pecans because this branch right here is now laying on the ground. But the pecans have done very well. We've had a lot of good rain early in the year. Research shows that pecan trees can suck up to 500 gallons of water per day. They're not getting that, so Well, I hope you enjoyed this week's presentation of Roll of 24 for 13 through 19 July 2026. Once again, a very eclectic array of images that I captured throughout the week. And once again, I wanted to give a shout out to Mr. Jared Poland of FroKnowsKnows.com for allowing me to use this elephant trunk from a picture he captured in Africa. This was for a fundraiser for a person named George, who was his guide, to bring water and electricity to this rural area where George and his family live. So thanks again for the permission to use that image as a backdrop. And if you did enjoy this presentation, please give it a thumbs up, and I'll see you all again next weekend. Thank you. Bye.